Okay. Now, guys, machine learning is, there are several types of machine learning. Okay. There are several types of machine learning, and primarily machine learning is of three types. Okay. First is supervised learning, second one is unsupervised learning, and third one is reinforcement learning. Okay. Um, in recent years, there has been a there has been a lot of talking going around regarding a fourth kind of fourth type fourth type of machine learning, which is called deep learning. But actually, guys, this that is not, you can say that it is a machine learning, but it is a subset of machine learning. And right now we are not going to do something related to deep learning. So that is why I'm not talking about deep learning right now. I'm talking about only the three kinds of machine learning, three types of machine learning. So guys, first is supervised learning. That is one type. Okay. Then next one is unsupervised learning, and the third one is reinforcement learning. Okay. So it's very, very important for us to understand that what these three types of, how these three types of machine learning differ from each other. Okay, so I will be talking in very brief manner about the definitions of these things, and I will try to make you understand not only definition, but I will also try to make you understand the core idea behind like these type of learning. Okay, so we have three types of learning with us. Now, this is very, very important kind of learning, guys. Majority of the applications in healthcare or in finance or economics or biology, medicine, whatever. Okay, majority of the applications right now, majority of the applications of machine learning are actually working on supervised learning. Okay, that's a fact. I mean, if you go anywhere, you're working in some organization which is using machine learning to achieve something in healthcare or maybe improve the healthcare. You will, the first thing which you will notice, the first thing which you will notice is that they are using supervised learning. Okay, in fact, most of the places supervised learning is being used. Okay, so that's a very important kind of a learning, guys. And I would highly recommend you, all of you, to basically focus specifically on this type of learning. I mean, there are other learnings also which are important, but my recommendation would be right now to understand in as much clarity as possible, like this supervised learning. Okay, so let's talk about what supervised learning is. Okay, so let's first go through definition. Okay, so supervised learning, guys, is a learning methodology. So it's a kind of, it's a way for us to make machines learn from data. Okay, it's a kind of a way. Okay, there are several ways, but it is one kind of a manner, okay, in which we can make machines learn from data. Okay, so supervised learning is a learning methodology or technique through which systems learn to perform tasks. Okay, what kind of task? Make decisions, identify patterns, okay, or something like that. In which learning requires feedback in the form of correct answers under the supervision of a teacher. Okay, so that is why, guys, because the learning is happening under the supervision of a teacher, that is why it is called supervised learning, because there is somebody there to supervise you. Okay, so let me take a wonderful real life example. Okay, so when we all were kids, then when we were learning about mathematics or English or Hindi or different kind of subjects. Suppose, let's take an example of a mathematics. So suppose when we all were kids, and suppose we were learning how to perform addition. Okay, so how we learned how to perform addition? Okay, we always learned under the supervision of somebody who already knew how to perform addition, right? So it's like you learned under the supervision of some tutor or your parents who already knew how to perform addition. Okay, so you are already learning under the supervision of somebody who already has the correct answer to that task. Okay, so you are already learning under the supervision of somebody who already has the correct answer for that task. That is how you are learning. So that person is basically giving you some kind of a feedback. Okay, so you are performing a task, you are reaching to your answer, and what that supervisor is doing for you, your parents or your tutor is doing for you, he is giving you feedback that whether you have performed correctly or you haven't performed correctly. And then based on that feedback, you are learning how to perform the task. Okay, so that is what supervised learning is all about. Okay, so there is always in supervised learning how you will identify whether you are learning to perform that task in supervised setting or not. There will always be correct answers, guys. There will always be correct answers related to that task. Okay, so if you are learning to perform some task and you want to answer this question whether I'm performing this task in supervised setting or not, or whether I'm learning to perform this task in supervised setting or not, then how you will identify? Well, you have to look for somebody or some kind of a source having correct answers. So if you have something like that, if you have a supervisor or if you have a list of correct answers with you, okay, so it's like you are right now when we are adults and we are doing engineering, we don't have a supervisor to correct us. So what we do? Well, we solve questions from books which have correct answers at the backside of the book, right? So that is also a kind of a supervised learning task, that we are learning how to perform a task by feedback from correct answers. Okay, so that is a very, very important feature of supervised learning. Okay, through this you can identify whether you will be performing a task in supervised setting or you are not performing a task in supervised setting. Okay, okay, so there will always be correct answers related to the task which you want to learn to perform. Okay, so how you will learn? Well, first you will perform the task, and obviously right now you are in the process of learning, so you will give some wrong answers, but feedback will be provided to you from the correct answers. You will take that feedback, you will work on yourself. Okay, try not to make the same mistakes again, and slowly you will evolve, and you will finally learn to perform that task. Okay, so that's what supervised learning is all about. That is what is happening in supervised learning. Okay, now what is happening in unsupervised learning, guys? Unsupervised learning is also a kind of learning methodology. It's a way for machines to learn. Okay, or technique. Okay, or technique through which systems learn to perform tasks in which learning doesn't requires any kind of feedback, hence there is no supervision involved there. Okay, so let's take an example. Okay, so guys, you know that there are several tasks in our life also which we learn to perform without anybody's supervision. Okay, we just learn. Okay, so nature is our teacher, or you can say somebody else is by default our teacher. We don't have an explicit supervisor with us. We don't have somebody sit with us to tell you whether you are doing it right or wrong, but in implicit manner we have some kind of supervisor with us. Okay, and from there we are learning. So we don't have any explicit supervisor, or we don't have anybody specially for us to guide us, to tell us that this answer is wrong and this answer is right, but we have somebody implicit with us. Okay, so there are various tasks which we learn in the absence of supervisor, in the absence of, I should be more clear, in the absence of explicit supervisor or explicit teacher. Okay, so that is what we do when we are learning in unsupervised setting, or in the absence of explicit supervisor or somebody there to basically correct us. Okay, so that is what unsupervised learning is, guys. Okay, now the third learning is very rarely known. Nobody talks about it. That is reinforcement learning. But guys, it is doing wonders for us. That is the irony, basically. Okay, so the irony of the situation is that the third kind of learning is very, very important. It is doing a lot of wonders for us right now in our current world, but very few people are familiar with this thing. Okay, so that is the situation, guys. So let's talk about reinforcement learning. What reinforcement learning is actually. Okay, this is very, very important, guys. It's kind of confusing. Okay, but you have to listen to me very, very carefully. Okay, so reinforcement learning is a learning methodology or technique through which systems learn to perform tasks in which learning primarily requires interacting with environment. So guys, environment is your teacher. Okay, so what I'm trying to say here is that in all the three kinds of learning, there is a teacher. Okay, but in supervised learning, there will be an explicit teacher. Like literally answers will be provided to you. Correct answers of a task will be provided to you. So there you can literally see with your eyes that there are correct answers. Okay, so you can identify. Okay, so this is supervised learning. But in unsupervised learning, there won't be explicit answers provided to you to learn to perform a task. So you can say that, okay, this is unsupervised learning. But what is happening in reinforcement learning? So guys, reinforcement learning is the scenario, or you can say it's a way for machines to learn. It's a kind of a way for machines to learn where machines are learning primarily, or the learning of the machines primarily requires interacting with environment. Now, what do you mean by interacting with environment? I will talk about that, but I will not expand on that that much, but I will talk about that. Okay, and the primary feature of such kind of learning is that there will be usually an absence of prior training data. Oh wow, this is amazing. We have been talking about machine learning, and we said that in machine learning we basically gather some data, and that computer-based system learns from data to identify patterns, take decisions for us. But guys, in this kind of learning, this is a very, very important thing to see, that most of the time there will be an absence of data. That's crazy, guys. This is crazy. Like you are learning without data. Okay. So it looks crazy. It sounds crazy that we are learning without data, but it is not crazy at all, guys. I mean, if you compare with yourself, there are several tasks which we learn to perform without any prior data. Okay, there are several tasks like that. Okay, so you guys must ask, can you give me an example? Okay, yes, definitely, guys. There is an example. There are a lot of examples actually. Learning how to ride a bicycle is a perfect example. Learning how to ride a motorbike, it's a perfect example. Learning how to ride an airplane or spaceship, something like that. That's a perfect example where we have an absence of training data. Okay, so it's not like if you want to learn how to ride a bicycle, you will ask from somebody, hey bro, just tell me how to ride a bicycle, and he will tell you some steps. That step 1, do this, step 2, do this, step 3, do this, step 4, do this, step 5, do this. Do you actually learn how to ride a bicycle by listening to his steps? No. You have to actually step on the bicycle. You have to make some mistakes. You will fall from the bicycle. So you are interacting with an environment. You are making some interaction with an environment. Now, what's your environment? Well, the environments are roads where you are riding the bicycle. That's your environment. You are learning how to ride a spaceship. What's your environment? It's space. That is where spaceship is floating. That's the whole world for you. That's basically the environment. You are learning how to ride a car. What's your environment? There are roads, traffic, people, intersections, traffic lights. That's your environment. Okay. So you don't actually learn how to ride a car by listening to somebody else. Okay. Like go open the door, sit in the car, start the car. No, you don't actually learn how to ride a car by listening to somebody else. You have to actually by yourself go on the driver's seat, sit there, close the door, feel the environment. So environment is your teacher. You screw up something, you feel bad about it, you learn from that. So environment is giving you feedback. Environment is your teacher. And from that teacher, you are learning. And then you will say, oh, next time I won't repeat this mistake. Okay. In fact, this happens with you also. Like I can very well tell you my story, like a very short story. Like I was learning how to do roller skates. Okay. I mean, I learned it very late, but that was my passion. So I learned it. So I was learning at the age of 30 how to do roller skating. Okay. And environment has given me feedback. I fell on the ground at high speeds. So I get feedback. I got hurt. Environment gave me feedback. He was my teacher. Teacher punished me. I got hurt. I got a feedback. I learned from that feedback. And I started kind of examining and kind of recalculating that what I did was wrong. I don't have to repeat this once again. So that's, guys, is reinforcement learning. And now you will tell me, okay, it sounds very exciting. It sounds very interesting, but is it practical? Yes, guys, it is practical. In fact, there are several applications of reinforcement learning which are already in surrounding us. Tesla's self-driving car is a perfect example of reinforcement learning. Okay, so you know now there are driverless cars which can drive on their own. So they are learning how they are learning to drive. They are learning from reinforcement learning. Okay, SpaceX self-landing boosters. Okay, which put the satellite into an orbit and they came back on their own. Okay, what is that? That is a perfect example of reinforcement learning. Okay, so this is a very, very exciting kind of a learning, guys. But here we are primarily going to talk about supervised. Okay. Okay. So guys, we are going to talk about deep learning, but not in very broad sense. I'm just going to give you a definition. Okay. So guys, deep learning is also another kind of learning, which has become a buzzword right now because majority of the people are using deep learning. Okay. So what is deep learning? So guys, deep learning is a subset of machine learning, or you can say it's a special kind of a machine learning. Okay. That's also that is also a way for a machine to learn. Deep learning is also a kind of a way for a machine to learn. Okay. And you can say that it is a special kind of a way for a machines to learn. That is why it is a subset. Okay. When something is a subset of a bigger set, then it means there is something special in that, which it is not sharing with the bigger part of the set. Right? So it is a subset of machine learning which enables systems to learn to perform better. Now, guys, there is one thing added, which is to perform better. I mean, using machine learning, you are also training the systems or making the system learn to perform something. But using deep learning, you can make them to perform better. So machines will still be able to perform the same task, but they will perform in better manner. Their performance will be more enhanced, will be more realistic, more better, right? Something like that. So it is a subset of machine learning which enables system to learn to perform better on the task of identifying patterns. So guys, you can see there are same task, same kind of things. Okay. But guys, how? That is very, very important. How how it is making machines learn to perform better. Okay, that is important. How? By finding more meaningful and deep latent representations of data, both structured and unstructured. uh, I know that it might be sounding like a thing that, "Oh, what the hell is this? This looks like a rocket science." But guys, it's not rocket science. Okay, it's a very very easy concept to understand. Okay, so how it is making the machines learn to perform better? By finding more meaningful and deep latent representations of data. And the data can be both structured and unstructured. Okay, data can be both structured and unstructured. That part I can talk about later, that what do you mean by structured and unstructured data. But first, let's talk about the difficult part. I mean, it's not difficult, but it might be sounding difficult for you. That what the hell is this meaningful and deep latent representations of data? Okay, and I can talk about the structured and unstructured data later on. That's not a big deal actually. You will understand what is structured and unstructured data. So guys, what is meaningful and deep latent representations? What do you mean by that? Meaningful and deep latent representation. What the hell? What do you mean? Okay, so let's see. Let's take an example. Okay, let's take a beautiful example. There are some things in our world which can't be quantified. Okay, you can't assign some numerical quantity to them. Okay, they can't be quantified. Okay, so like for example, performance of an employee. It can't be quantified, right? You cannot quantify a performance of an employee. Okay, because when it comes to appraisal, so suppose you want to basically hike a salary of an employee, or you want to give him a hike in his salary. So what you will do as an HR manager, what you will do is you will do an appraisal of that employee. You will basically do a complete background check on that employee, that how the employee is performing, what is the performance of an employee. Okay, so you might have heard that whenever it comes to performance, or you can say feedback of a restaurant or a hotel or something like that, you always give stars. Okay, you always give stars. 1-star rating, 2-star rating, 3-star rating, 4-star rating. You don't give a number. 10 number, 12 number, 15 number, 30 number, not like that. There is always a rating. So that's a clear-cut example that why you are not assigning some kind of a number to the performance of a restaurant or a hotel or employee or movie or something like that. You always assign a rating. Okay, and guys, that is not quantitative. Okay, that is not something which is numerical. Okay, because you are giving stars. You are not giving some kind of a number. Your marks are a quantitative representation of your performance. Okay, that's a very good example of quantitative representation, or you can say assigning some number to your performance, that out of 100 how much marks you are getting. Okay, your CGPA is a wonderful example of quantitative representation of your performance. But guys, star rating is not a quantitative representation of the performance. Okay, so in that case, what do we do? Well, you start collecting all the data of an employee, through which you can get some insight into the performance of an employee. Okay, what kind of data you will collect? How much regular he is in his office? What is his attendance? How much early he left his office? Okay, does he takes any invalid leaves? Okay, how much projects he has completed in the past 1 year? how much projects he has completed on time in the past 1 year, total how many projects he has completed, how much profit he has done to his organization. Okay, so you gather all such kind of a data. Okay, and then you extract the meaningful stuff from that data. What do you mean by meaningful stuff? So suppose, let me take another example just to give you an idea. So you guys know that there is a very interesting quantitative representation of a health of a person, and that is BMI, body mass index, or BMR, you can say, body mass ratio. They both are a little bit different, but I'm just taking an example. Let's say body mass index. Now you know how body mass index is calculated. Okay, as far as I know, body mass index is calculated as weight divided by height square. Okay, but suppose you don't know how to calculate BMI. You only have height and you only have your weight. If somebody asks you that if I provide you with only these two things, how can you evaluate or how can you assign some quantitative measure to my health, that how healthy I am? Okay, well, you have to convert these two numbers into something meaningful, and that is BMI. Something similar is happening here, guys. You want to assign some quantitative, meaningful number to the performance of an employee. What you will do? You will gather all the data related to his performance, and then you extract some meaningful representation or some meaningful information from that data, so that you can identify the performance of an employee, or you can assign some numeric metric to the performance of an employee. And that is what deep learning is doing, guys. It is finding more meaningful, which can be make sense, and deep latent representations. Guys, latent means something which you are extracting. It's not your original data. You cannot infer performance of an employee from the original data. How much leaves he is taking, how much projects he has completed. Only this much is not sufficient. You have to extract something meaningful, and that extracted version will be called latent representations. Latent means hidden. Latent, you guys might have heard about latent heat in physics. It's a kind of a same thing we are using here. Latent representations. Latent representation means something very rich information hidden in that data. Okay, so once you extract that hidden information regarding the performance of an employee from that data, and that is a meaningful information, then you will be able to better answer about the performance of an employee, obviously. Okay, so guys, that is what deep learning is doing. It is actually taking the data, extracting meaningful information from that data, and because that extracted information was hidden in your original data, that is why it is called latent representation of your data. And obviously, when you have more meaningful latent representation of your data, you will be able to take better decisions. You will be able to identify better, you will be able to identify patterns in a better manner, because you have more filtered, rich, meaningful data with you. And that is how deep learning is working, guys. Okay, so it's all about filtering your data. Deep learning is primarily about filtering your data. Okay, so once you have a rich, filtered, better data with you, then you can use supervised learning or unsupervised learning or reinforcement learning, whatever you like, to come up with better decisions, finding patterns in a better manner, better patterns, or something like that. Okay, so guys, these are some important, interesting applications of deep learning. Deep learning is used in self-driven cars. Okay, it is used in automatic handwriting generation. So it's like you give your handwritten notes to a computer-based system, and it starts generating the notes in your handwriting itself. That's interesting, guys. Okay, so you can do pixel restoration. So it's like you have some 2 megapixel image, but you want to convert it into 64 megapixel image. Okay, so you can do that. You can do some pixel restoration also. You can improve resolution also. Okay, you can do colorization of black and white images. That is interesting, guys. Okay, you can create some interesting visuals which you see in your dreams. Okay, using deep learning. Okay, you can use it in healthcare also. Okay, you can do it for demographic prediction also. Okay, sound addition to silent films. Okay, so you can you can add basically dialogues also, which is interesting. But they have their own negatives also, guys, which I'm not going to talk about right now. You can use news. You can use it in news aggregation also. Automatic machine translation. Google Translate. Google Translate is a wonderful application of deep learning. You put some sentence in some language A and it translates it into language B. Okay, so that's basically automatic machine translation. Okay, so that's amazing, guys. Like how it is able to do that. Okay, so guys, there are several jobs related to machine learning. Very soon we are going to come to the core stuff. So I'm going to basically get rid of all these things, get done with all these basic stuff which I'm telling you right now. So there are primarily 4 jobs related to machine learning in market right now. So there is a job position of data scientist. So if you are a data scientist, then primarily you will be working on machine learning. Okay. There is a job position of machine learning engineer right now. There is a job position of computer vision engineer, and there is a job position of NLP engineer. Okay, so that is the situation. There are primarily 4 job roles right now, which is available for you if you are trained in machine learning and you want to find a job in machine learning. Okay. So now I'm going to talk about little bit about mathematical areas in machine learning. So guys, what makes machine learning? Okay, what makes machine learning works? How you can use machine learning to make a machine learn from data? What goes behind the curtains? Okay, so that is what I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to talk about it in a very brief manner, not in a very detailed manner, because we have to work on a case study also. So I will be reserving maximum time for that case study. Okay, so guys, machine learning basically involves the use of statistics, linear algebra, and calculus. So guys, these are the 3 things or mathematical areas which are used in machine learning. You have to have a good knowledge about statistics, you have to have a good knowledge about linear algebra, and you have to have a good knowledge about calculus. And guys, none of these 3 things are something which you haven't studied. You have studied these things in your grade 11 and 12. You don't actually require to study high level of mathematics. If you know these 3 things very well, matrices, vectors, all those kind of things. If you know calculus, basic calculus, differential calculus I'm talking about, not integral calculus I'm talking about, and you know good amount of statistics, you are good, boss. You are good to start your journey in machine learning. Okay. The programming languages which are used in machine learning is primary programming language which is used is Python, and there are several libraries of Python which are used in machine learning. There is Pandas, there is SciPy, NumPy, Matplotlib, PyTorch, TensorFlow, Keras, Scikit-learn, Theano, and Orange. And there are several other libraries also. That's just a pictorial representation. Okay, that's not this list is non-exhaustive. You can basically keep on going. There are a lot of libraries. Okay, Python is the most used library for machine learning. I'm saying library. Python is the most used programming language for machine learning, and there are several libraries of this programming language. which are used in machine learning. TensorFlow, PyTorch, Scikit-learn. In fact, today we'll be using some of these libraries. Okay, today we'll be using some of these libraries. So some libraries which we'll be using today is Pandas. Then there is NumPy. Okay, then there is Scikit-learn. So these three libraries we'll be using today in our case study. Okay, we'll be using Pandas, we'll be using NumPy, and we'll be using Scikit-learn. Okay. Apart from that, there is another programming language which is next to Python in terms of popularity in being used in machine learning is R programming. So this is another programming language which is used after Python. So Python is the most popular language, and we'll be also using Python. Okay. And after Python comes R programming. R programming is also being used, but R programming is right now I would recommend for maximum of the statistics, not machine learning. Machine learning R programming is being used, but according to me, you should use R programming if you are working in statistics or something like that. Primarily, we'll be using Python and three libraries today. So these four things we'll be dealing with today: Python programming, Pandas, NumPy, and Scikit-learn. So guys, now we will be talking something about statistics. Okay, we'll be talking something about statistics because I told you that in order to learn machine learning, you need three things, three mathematical fields. One is statistics, second one is linear algebra, third one is calculus. Okay, and I'm right now here going to only talk about statistics. No linear algebra, no calculus, and I'm going to give you a very, very shallow overview of statistics, which can be completed in, let's say, 10 minutes or 15 minutes, not more than that. Okay, and rest of the time we'll utilize for business case study or case study of machine learning. So why we need statistics for machine learning? That's a very, very interesting question. I mean, yeah, I mean, I told you a little bit of everything about machine learning, but it is very, very hard for us to understand that how come statistics, linear algebra, and calculus being used in machine learning. And then on the other side, we have programming also, computer programming. And these both things are coming together in machine learning. So you are using programming and you are using maths. You are basically joining both of them to come up with something fascinating, which machine learning is doing for you. Okay. So guys, these are the topics which we are going to talk about in this short slide. Okay. We are going to talk about something which is kind of unknown to most of you guys, but it is very, very important to understand if you really want to understand the project which you are going to work on today. So guys, today I'm really going to show you that how machine learning is used in healthcare, okay, through some project. Okay, a very interesting thing I will show you. Okay, and you will literally see with your eyes that it's unimaginable. It's really interesting to see how machine learning is used in medicine, healthcare. Okay, so we'll be working on a project, but in order to understand in a very generic manner that how machine learning is able to do that, how it is able to learn from data. Okay, so guys, all of you would have already been given a data file with you. Okay, probably as far as I can guess that most of you guys would have already been given a CSV file, data.csv file. So guys, that's the data. Okay, that's the data which we are going to use to make a machine learn to perform a task for us. Okay, using Python programming, Pandas, NumPy, and Scikit-learn. Okay, but in order to understand that what is happening around us, okay, because when we'll be making that application, when we'll be coding, there will be some things which are coming in front of you. Okay, and in order to understand those things, you have to first understand this. So you have to first understand these You have to first find answers to these 6 questions. Okay, so once you have an answer to these 6 questions, you can very well understand how the machine is able to learn from that data or the CSV file which is provided to you. Okay, so I know that it's kind of might be, you guys might be very much excited that okay, when we are going to start working on that application. And but guys, before that, we need to find answers to these 6 questions. Only after this we will be able to start. Okay, so it's my humble request to all of you that please hold on to your excitement for another 15 minutes and then we can start. Okay, so guys, these 6 things we'll be talking about. We'll be talking about deterministic variables, random variables. Okay, why random stuff is interesting, what is statistics, okay, which is very, very important. Why statistics in machine learning, why we are using statistics in machine learning, and what is machine learning. Okay, so let's start without any delay, guys. All of you have studied variables in algebra. So these are the same variables we are talking about here. Okay, so guys, what are deterministic variables? So if the outcome of the variable, or you can say the value of the variable, is changing in the fixed manner, then that variable is called a deterministic variable. Okay, let's do not waste time. Let's jump into properties so that you can better understand what are deterministic variables. So guys, these variables are our usual variables in algebra, which we have studied in grade 6, grade 7. So these are our same variables. So guys, if the change in variable y can be defined by a relationship, so it means if you can define a function for a variable, then that variable is a deterministic variable. Now you will say, what's so special about that? We have been continuously studying variables for which we can define a function. So that's fine. These are deterministic variables. So all the kind of variables you have studied till now in your grade 11, 12, 10th, engineering, these are all deterministic variables, guys. Okay. So you can define, if you can define a function for a variable, then that variable is a deterministic variable. As simple as that. Okay. So y will vary according to the function. So you have a fixed function for that variable, and that variable y will always vary according to that function. Okay, for its lifetime. As simple as that. Okay, so we can determine the value of y at any value of x with 100% probability. So you'll say, what's so special about that? Definitely, there is nothing special about that. If y is defined by some function, then for a given x, you can find the value of y. There is no uncertainty regarding the value of y. You can clearly say that for x equal to 5, I will get y equal to something, maybe 10 or 11, and that you know already. So y is your deterministic variable. So what's so special about that? That's fine. Okay. So if the variable has all these properties, okay, if a variable has all these properties, then your variable is a deterministic variable. So we know this thing now, right? There is nothing special about that. Okay. So there is a fantastic example of a line through which we can very well explain that what do we mean by all those 4 properties. So guys, whenever you basically plot a graph, okay, whenever you plot a graph, the first thing which you will notice is even in your notebooks also, when you plot a graph with your hands, you plot a graph over a very limited area. Okay, you plot a graph over a very limited area. You don't plot it all over the page. Okay, now why this is the case? Because you know that there is no point in making that graph all over your page, because if this line is going like this, then it will keep on going like this, and it will also keep on going like this. So there is no point in sketching a line all over the slide. I can make a short line, no big deal, because it will keep on varying like this. Okay, because y is a deterministic variable. It is governed by the equation of a line. What's so special about that? Totally fine. Okay, so that's the scenario, guys. Same happens with the parabola also. When you draw a parabola on your notebook, you don't plot it, you don't keep on going like that, because you know it will vary like that. What is the point in making the parabola all over the page? I know that it is going to go like that. Okay, nothing is going to change. So you make a small parabola, just as a symbol that it is going to vary like that all over the page. There is no point in making such a big parabola. Okay, because y is a deterministic variable. It will vary according to the curve of the parabola. The same thing is happening here also, guys. In fact, there can be several forms. Y can be equal to x cube. Y can be equal to root x. Whenever y has some function, y is a deterministic variable. You plot a graph of y over a small area because you don't want to waste your page, because y is going to vary in the same fashion. That's it. Y is a deterministic variable. Okay. Now comes something interesting, which you guys might not have heard about, which is totally crazy idea. Okay. On one side, you have variable y, which is defined by some function, and on another side, you have something weird. That's totally weird. That's something called random variables. So now we will ask ourselves this question: what the hell is this? We haven't yet studied something like that in our whole life. We have been dealing with deterministic variables. We have been dealing with variables for whom y equal to fx. What the hell is this? This is a random variable. What the hell is this? Let's see, guys. So if the out, now this is very, very interesting. If the outcome of a variable is changing in the variable manner, now this is crazy. If the outcome of the variable is changing not in the fixed manner, but in the variable manner, then that variable is called a random variable. Now you will see, sir, this definition is totally confusing. I don't know what the hell is this. No issues. Let's talk about the properties. We will understand the definition once we talk about the properties. So guys, these are also our usual algebraic variables, x, y, z, something like that. But one thing very interesting about such kind of variables is that y cannot be defined by some function now. So now you will ask me, really? Such kind of variables also exist that we cannot define them through some function. Yes, guys, they exist. And in 5 minutes, you will be literally shocked to know something, which I'm going to tell you. It is going to really shock you out. Okay, you will see something interesting. So y varies randomly. Okay, it's y's choice. I will vary the way I like. I won't vary according to a function. I won't vary in a fixed manner. I will vary the way I like. Nobody can control me. So y varies randomly, and it cannot be governed by some function. That's it. That is why, guys, y is called random variable, because it is varying randomly. Okay. We cannot, guys, this is very, very important point. We cannot determine the value of y at any value of x with 100% probability. Now, this is crazy, guys. Because before, when y was equal to fx, let's say y is actually equals to 2x plus 3. Now, for x equal to 1, you will get y equal to 5. It doesn't matter how many times you take x equal to 1, you will always get y equal to 5. Because y is defined by some function. Okay. And guys, this is the math which you have already studied in your 11th and 12th standard. I'm not talking about any rocket science here. Probability, you guys know a little bit. You guys know what are functions. So I'm not talking about here anything rocket science. I'm talking about the basic stuff. So it should not basically bother you. Okay, it's a simple stuff actually. So at any point of x, at any value of x, you cannot determine the value of y with 100% probability, guys. 100% probability, you cannot. So for x equal to 1, y can be 5 also, y can be 7 also, y can be 1 also, y can be 0 also. You don't know what y will be. Y will take a single value, but we don't know what value it is going to take. For x equal to 1, it can be 5, 7, 1, any value. It will take one value, but I don't know which one. It can take 5 also, it can take 7 also, it can take 1 also, it can take 0 also. I don't know because there is no function. Okay, this is interesting. So guys, there is an uncertainty in y. Okay, there is uncertainty in y because I don't know exactly what will be the value of y. Okay. So every value has some probability of occurrence. Every value which y can take has some probability of occurrence. You cannot say with 100% probability that for x equal to 1, y will be equal to 5. Okay. But you can say one thing, that for x equal to 1, y can be equal to one of these values. Guys, it will take one value, but I don't know which one. Let's say 5, 4, 1, 0, 7. Let's say it can take one of the 5 values, but I don't know which value it will take because I don't have any function. So for x equal to 1, y can take 5 also. But guys, for this 5, there will be some probability. There will be some probability. So let's say for x equal to 1, y can be equal to 5. And the probability that y will be equal to 5 is 20%. The probability that y will be equal to 4, it's 10%. The probability that y will be equal to 1 is 25%. Okay. How much total probability is how much? So 30 and 25. That's 55% right now. Okay. Probability that y will be equal to 0, let's say it's 17.5%. So 0.175. And probability that y will be equal to 7, that is also 17.5%. And guys, guess what? When you add all the probabilities, it's actually equal to 1. So 0.2 plus 0.1 is 30%, that 55%, and remaining 35%, and total sum is 1. So guys, you can clearly see that now for a given value of x, for let's say first y can take y equal to 5, then again for x equal to 1, y can take some other value. But which value it is going to take, I don't know. It's varying randomly. It has some probabilities associated with that. Most likely value will be which value? Whose probability is the highest. So guys, it means that for x equal to 1, most likely, I don't know. Most likely doesn't mean that y will be actually equal to 1. That's most likely. Probably you will get y equal to 1. But it doesn't mean that you cannot get you cannot get another value. You can get 4 also. You can get 5 also. But most likely you will get 1 because the probability is 25%. That's the highest probability the value of y has. So that is why, guys, now y is a random variable. This is weird because before y was actually equal to a function. So for every same time you are taking x equal to 1, we are getting y equal to 5. X equal to 1, y equal to 5. X equal to 1, y equal to 5. That is not happening here. So first time you can take x equal to 1, you may get some other value. Next time you will take x equal to 1, you may get some other value. Because it's not fixed. There is no function. So guys, y is a random variable. Very, very important point. We are going to talk about it very soon in our project. Okay, so guys, I can basically pictorially represent the concept here. You can clearly see that y is a deterministic variable because looking at these points, you can easily sketch a line. And if you can sketch a graph, definitely that graph will be having some function. In this case, the graph is a function of line. So y is a deterministic variable because it is varying in a fixed manner in the pattern of a line. But what if y will vary randomly? What will happen? How your points will look like if y will vary randomly? Guys, your point will look like something like this. You cannot plot a graph of this because the points are varying randomly everywhere. They are going haywire. There is no function, right? So that is what y is, guys, in our case right now. It's a random variable. No function. You cannot plot a graph from these points. You cannot plot a graph from these points. Y is totally going haywire everywhere. It's random. It's varying randomly. Okay, so guys, random is interesting. Now this is very, very interesting. The time at which you have your meals is random, guys. So every time you have your lunch, you don't know that next day at what time you are going to have your lunch with 100% probability. That time can vary. So the time at which you have your meals is random. That's interesting. The time at which you commute to and from work is also random. The time at which you go to sleep is also random, or wake up is also random. The marks scored by you in examination is also random. The result of a cricket match is random. Now this reminds me of a very, very interesting thing, that suppose, guys, if you make the result of a match deterministic, would you watch a match if the result of a match is deterministic? Would you watch a match if you already knew that India is going to win with 100% probability? You won't. Because randomness is what is bringing us the excitement, which is raising our adrenaline. It is bringing us the excitement. Randomness is that thing, basically, guys. If you already knew that Sachin Tendulkar is going to score a century in a match, and you already knew how much runs he is going to score, let's say 151 runs, would you watch a match? You won't. You will be sitting somewhere in a hotel, hanging out with friends. Oh, I already know the result of the match. Randomness is making our lives exciting, guys. That is one thing which I wanted to share with you, all of you. It's not deterministic things which are making our life exciting. It's the random things which are making our lives exciting. Okay? This is interesting. It means all our life, we were studying about deterministic variables, and what we are looking here is that we are surrounded by randomness. We are surrounded by randomness. The minute you step out of your house, you are surrounded by random. In fact, you are sitting in your house, you are surrounded by randomness. When you get a phone call on your phone, that is also random. You don't know when you will get a phone call on your phone. Whole life is driven by randomness, guys. Whole life is driven by randomness. Lightning is a random phenomenon. You play a game which is based on die is a random phenomenon. You toss a coin, whether you are going to get a head or a tail, heads or a tails, that's a random phenomenon. What is statistics? Statistics is the mathematics of randomness. Now, this is amazing, because till your whole life right now, you are studying about deterministic variables. And now we are going to step into random domain. So we need statistics, guys, because we have studied math of the deterministic variables. Now we are going to study the algebra of random variables. So statistics is also called the algebra of random variables. Okay. It is a field of mathematics which helps us to understand the behavior of random variables. So if you want to understand how a random variable is varying, we need statistics, because there is no function defined for that variable. Okay. Statistics deal with describing and getting inferences from the data. So any data you have, you are describing that data, you are getting inferences from that data. That is what you do in statistics. So broadly, statistics is divided into two parts: descriptive statistics, inferential statistics. Do you guys know where we use statistics, guys? We use statistics in medical studies, drug discovery, okay? All those kind of things. Weather forecasts, statistics is used. Quality control, statistics is used. Stock markets. It's basically all those areas where machine learning is used. So all the areas where machine learning is being used, you can literally say that statistics is also used there. And many more application areas. Okay. In fact, statistics played a major role in the drug discovery of COVID-19, Covaxin, Covishield, okay, AstraZeneca. AstraZeneca is basically a company, but yeah, I mean, all the vaccines which have been manufactured. Like statistics played a major role. Do you know how the efficacy of a vaccine is measured? It's using statistics. How much effective the vaccine is, that is measured using statistics. Guys, what is machine learning? Now we are getting little bit technical. So I'm really sorry for this slide, but it is important. So guys, it is a set of mathematical tools and algorithms using which a function can be defined for random variables. This is crazy. This is crazy, guys. This is crazy. Because this is what we have studied. I mean, you cannot define a function for a random variable. It's not possible. But we are saying that using machine learning, you can define a function for random variables. Now the next question arises, it is possible? Is it possible? Can you do that? I mean, it looks impossible because how can you define the function for something which is not following a pattern, which is not following a function? It is just randomly going everywhere. Well, the answer is not 100%, but let's say 80 to 99% accurate. That's a lot. In the case of something which looks impossible, but still we are able to achieve with 80 to 99% accuracy. In technical terms, machine learning examines the past history, then uses it to get an approximate, highly accurate pattern of variation of random variables. So guys, one is static pattern of variation, like a sine wave. That is a static pattern. It is going up and down, up and down, up and down, and it will keep on going up and down. And another one is randomness. Now, how a randomness will look like? It will look like this. This is randomness. You don't know what is going to happen next. There is no function. What is the relationship between statistics and machine learning? Guys, statistics is the most important tool used by machine learning. Machine learning is simply upscaled version of concepts in statistics, linear algebra, and multivariate calculus. 80% is statistics. Guys, this is interesting, very, very important, because from the project point of view, statistics define the behavior of random variable in terms of something called probability distributions. So statistics defines the behavior of random variable in terms of something called probability distributions. Machine learning uses the concept of probability distributions to define and approximate highly accurate patterns of variations of random variable. That is function. So basically, machine learning using the concept of probability distribution to define 80 to 99% accurate function for the variation of random variables. Okay. And guys, what are the different kinds of data which we use in machine learning? We use text, we use images, we use videos, and we use voice samples. So, and we use tabular data. Data in the form of tables. Data in the form of tables. So guys, this data is structured. This data is structured data. It has a structure. It has a fixed structure. Okay. This data is unstructured. Text is an unstructured data. This data is structured. Okay. This data is structured. This data is unstructured. Voice sample data is unstructured. Text data is unstructured. Video data is, you can say it's a structured data, and images data is structured. Voice sample data is unstructured. Okay, you guys can ask me later on that what do you mean by structured and unstructured. So guys, now we are going to start our project. I congratulate you that you have anyhow you have become able to bear 1.5 hours of I would say torture, but finally we are here actually. Okay, so we are going to today show you. I'm going to today show you a small application of machine learning practically through Python programming and its libraries to perform breast cancer tumor classification. Okay, so let's see guys what is our problem. Okay, so guys you can clearly see on the right hand side our structured data. You can clearly see guys the data is in a structured format. It's a structured format. Okay, there are several rows and there are several columns. It's in the form of a table. Okay, and guys the data set will consist of data of several benign and malignant tumors, with each tumor already been assigned to correct answers. Guys, each tumor has already been assigned to correct answers. It means we know the correct answers here. Correct answers are given to us explicitly. You can clearly see a diagnosis. So it means we will be using what? Supervised learning. Supervised learning we will be using, guys. Supervised learning. Okay. So we are going to use supervised learning today in our project. Okay. So correct answers are provided to us, that whether the tumor is benign or the tumor is malignant. And it is the data of breast cancer tumors. Okay, so you going to use machine learning in medicine application or healthcare application or biology application, you can say. Now, what is the problem? What we are going to solve using this project? What is our final aim? So guys, diagnosing a breast cancer tumor as cancerous or benign, not cancerous, correctly makes a big difference in the life expectancy and quality of life of a patient. Okay. Misdiagnosis of breast tumor can have drastic consequences on the medical condition of the patient. Obviously, guys, if some disease goes misdiagnosed, then it is going to wreak havoc on the health of the patient. In many cases, quite frequently, misdiagnosis of breast tumors happen in the presence of human intervention and medical experts. Guys, sometimes even doctors also misdiagnose tumors. They tell the benign tumor as, they diagnose the benign tumor as malignant or diagnose the malignant tumor as benign. They can misdiagnose also. Even the medical experts can misdiagnose also. So it means sometimes even medical experts are not able to diagnose breast tumors correctly. Hence, it becomes very important. Now, guys, this is what the target of our case study is. This is what we are going to achieve today. Hence, it becomes very important to develop a machine learning based system which can correctly diagnose breast tumors at a very high rate, possibly even higher than medical experts. So we have to develop a computer based system which will learn through supervised learning, and it will be able to correctly classify at a very high rate, possibly even higher than medical experts. So given a data set of breast cancer tumors, so guys, we are given this kind of a data set. The data file which is provided to you, that data file is having such kind of a data, which I will show you in a while. So we must develop a system which will learn to perform correct diagnosis of breast tumors from the same data set. So we'll use this data set, or we'll use this data, and we will make a machine learn to perform correct diagnosis. That means if the tumor is benign, our machine should also do the diagnosis as benign. If the tumor is malignant, our machine should also diagnose the tumor as malignant. And we'll make the machine learn to do this from our data. Okay, that is what our target is, guys. So the learning methodology, we are going to use supervised learning, and the algorithm, the way, or I would say the algorithm which we are going to use is called Naive-Bayes classifier, guys. Okay, Naive-Bayes classifier. So any kind of an algorithm which is a classifier, the job of an algorithm is to assign the category to the tumor. So here in our case, the category is benign or malignant.